So this is the final test result of today. A little bit of the close-ups. This was the very first one. It's very jiggity. Looks like one of the colors right here was too liquid, so it was not moving at the same speed, but I do see a lot of pearlescence that I added into the pigments. Then this baby, also a lot of problems with jiggity design in the center, but I like the colors. I mean, the pigments are beautiful. I just have to fine-tune the formula. This was the mix of my previous colors and new ones with pearlescence, but again, something is off. Like, I don't like this distorted center. This baby is my favorite. This is my favorite by far. I used metallics, copper, gold, then yellow with iridescent right under the black cell activator. And what happened, black and yellow, it created like shades of green and brownish and copper. And this is my favorite today. This was interesting how orange took over pretty much all of the negative space. It was the very first color that I poured, layered, but it's promising. I mean, again, jiggity. I have to figure out, something is not working. I think it's either too thick or too thin, the cell activator. And this is my least favorite. I mean, it's still interesting, still delicate, it's just different. So I will let them dry until tomorrow, and tomorrow I will peel them off, and let's see how they look when they dry. Okay, so I am reviewing my test pours that I did last night. They are still a little bit, they need some time to dry, maybe like a few more hours, but it is complete disappointment. Because I used my pillow paint, which is much thinner. It performed actually better than the one recommended by the group. So what I see here, there are a lot of problems, meaning that the paint is cracking everywhere, and it's so bumpy and uneven. I mean, if I would varnish it with resin, probably it would save it, but I wouldn't, because it has a lot of like cracks, and looks like the varnish is drying a little bit faster on the surface, and it pulls the pigments, and it kind of like creates this cavities. Same thing. Oh, this was the very first one, the very jiggity one. I dipped my finger here while it was still wet, but yeah, it has too much texture, and not in a good way, like all these cavities, cracks in between the colors and the pigments. So this is a no-no. This was the combination of my premixed paints that actually they did perform a little bit better, and the ones that had Jassonia varnish and deep base, they do not work for this particular application. This was my favorite, and actually it's not bad. But again, I used two of the metallics that were my recipe. I used my pillow. The only new ingredient here was the yellow color, which was mixed with polyacrylic, I mean with a Jassonia pouring medium. So this one I think I will keep. It looks beautiful. I have the, I see the metallics, iridescent, so it's still damp, so it needs some time to dry. This one is also, it has some weird texture, little like bumps and scars and cracks, and it just, no, it's a total disaster. This one was my least favorite. Same problems over here. So I did all of these pours yesterday, and I went to bed, and while I'm in bed in my PJs trying to fall asleep, I'm like, why don't I try to use the recommended paint and imprint it onto the silicone map that I got at IKEA for that specific purpose. And so I did this, just one pour. I just like dumped color, I dumped the Home Depot house paint, which was drying terribly previously. I mean, it still dries terribly because it creates a lot of cracks. And but then when I was peeling it off of the mat, let's see, maybe this side will go better. Then I saw this beauty. It dried perfectly. I have some cracks on this side, but it doesn't matter because it will be like a part of design. Like, it did not affect the pigment distribution on the front surface. And it's lightweight. It's actually dried. It was dry this morning. Meanwhile, these guys are still they still damp, even though the color is super thin. So with silicone mats, I am achieving great surface. All of the colors, they kept their brightness. I mean, usually acrylics, when they dry, they dull up, but maybe because there was just only a gloss varnish, it kept all of the colors intact. It's consistent in terms of thickness, so I can transfer it onto my surfaces, onto the canvas boards. I'll try to do that with this canvas paper. The only problem is that I do see imprints of the texture of the mat. It has a little weird, like a, I don't know, like a check, like a grid texture. But I am hoping that when I transfer this onto the canvas and then I will cover it with a very, very light layer of varnish, it will camouflage it, it will disappear. So that will be my next test. But this is a promising thing.